The original Portal introduced an entirely new dimension to puzzle games. And since then, there have been a lot of Portal clones that take similar settings and use some twist on that first-person, mind-bending puzzle game that Portal introduced. The Entropy Center is one such Portal clone. However, instead of portals, you have a gun that can rewind objects through time. Trapped alone in a long-forgotten facility filled with test rooms, it's up to you to do all the puzzles. So is this clone worth checking out? Or do I wish I could rewind the time I spent playing it? Let's discuss. I was really intrigued by the Entropy Center's shtick at the outset. It sounds like a great idea that will in theory allow for mind-bending and unique puzzles. Unfortunately, in execution, it just doesn't work. I found the puzzles in the game overall far too easy, and the main gimmick really essentially just was enter the room, figure out the order that you need to move through it, and then move the blocks that will help you move through it just in the reverse order so that you can then reverse them with your little time gun thing. This might sound reductive, but the major difference, I guess, is just the difficulty. 95% of the puzzles in the Entropy Center are so easily deduced, it's so obvious what you need to do and how, that solving the puzzles really feels more tedious than anything. Even some of the harder puzzles, they're hard because you kind of have to do something and then you realize like, oh, I needed to do that too. It's not that it's well hidden for you to figure out, it's just you kind of get to it eventually. On top of that, because of the rewinding mechanic, this game really suffers from poor pacing with too long, I forget the exact term for it, but essentially how long it takes you from determining the solution to actioning the solution. You can go watch other videos, I know they're out there, that talk about solving the puzzles being the fun of the puzzle. So when you solve the puzzle, but then have to spend like a minute setting up all the blocks and such so that you can rewind them correctly, and then another minute actually rewinding everything and moving through the level, it just becomes so tedious, especially if you miss a jump or accidentally rewind the block too far so that it's not over the platform it needs to be on. Then you got to set up everything again, and it's just awful. Oh, it's so terrible. It takes so much time to reset and rerun through a solution that you already know. And this is such a huge shame because the game actually does have a lot of cool mechanics that it introduces. There's a ton of different puzzle blocks to use, as well as conveyor belts, spring launchers, giant fans, and the test center itself. As is par for the course with these kinds of games, you're in this long abandoned facility where they do puzzles for some reason, but this game actually uses it and uses it well. Sometimes a pile of collapsed building rubble is something that you need to get on top of and rewind so that it goes back up and you ride it up to the ceiling or the next floor to get to a new area. And on top of that, the way the story actually incorporates where you are is really effective. And this is what makes the lack of good puzzle pacing even worse, because the story really is cool. Unlike Portal, as you go through this facility, you actually learn a lot about the world that you're in, the context, what was going on here at this testing center. The narrative in this game is real, and it's good. It's actually really engaging, it's really clever, and it's fun to see it play out. You just don't want to because the puzzles get in the way. I did think that the ending didn't really stick the landing, but the journey is definitely worth taking. I don't want to talk too much about the story, I don't want to spoil it, just to say it's really clever, really good, and really uses the mechanics of entropy and moving backwards and forwards in time really well. I do think they had a real missed opportunity with the narrative because your character doesn't really express much, and especially at the end as you kind of reach the climax of the story, the character, you don't really say much, you don't really act to surprised, excited by the revelations that you're coming to. Even though the character does talk throughout the game, it felt really weird that you do have a voiced character who's going through some honestly insane stuff at the end and just doesn't seem too concerned about it, too invested in it. It was really weird. And I think if you had spent a little more time there on the script, on the character, I think it might have helped the narrative not feel so kind of unintuitive. I think it would have made the ending feel not so unintuitive, because it really is at odds with a lot of what the story has been telling you in the lead up. As you go through the story, you learn all this stuff, and then at the end it almost feels like your character ignores it without any justification or reason or explanation as to why. I think the story itself is making a statement, and the statement in theory is good, but the delivery of it felt forced, and so it kind of lost a lot of power that it really could have had, and did have for like 90% of the story's runtime. Overall, the Entropy Center is a tough game to recommend. I did really enjoy the story, but the puzzles themselves left a lot to be desired and caused a lot of frustration. Not because they were hard to figure out, but because they could be difficult to implement, and when you mess up, you have to reset this entire sequence, and it's not because you didn't know something or were stuck figuring something out, it was you just missed a jump or something. The story really is engaging, though, with a lot of lore that you can find to expand on the world, and I think it is more effective to actually play the game versus, say, watching a Let's Play. So honestly, I don't know. I guess give the game a shot. Just be aware of what you might be getting into. So for a final score, I'll give the presentation a 4 out of 5, the gameplay a 2.5 out of 5, and the story a 4 out of 5, for an overall rating of a 3.5 out of 5, with value, get it on sale, maybe. Just know that it's not the best. But what do you think? Is this a great puzzler? Is it better than Portal? Let me know in the comments below. What are some other puzzle games that you like to play? Let me know, and I'll see you all with the next video.